Spring is here. It's time to start thinking about family fun in the outdoors. This is Chris Williams promoting my good friends at Plaza RV in Bondurant. I've now bought 2 travel trailers from this locally owned company in the past 5 years. It's completely changed my family's life. We love spending time in the outdoors, tailgating, and most of all, being together. Camping has been an awesome escape for us, and I would encourage you to think about it as well. Head over to their lot in Bondurant. They have motorhomes, travel trailers, truck trailers, fifth wheels, and more. Check them out today at plazarv.com. They're 100% locally owned. Tell them that Chris Williams sent you.
Heartland Flags and Gifts presents Legends and Listeners with Scott Dochterman and Chad Leistikow. Fly 'em high and fly 'em proud. Find your flag at heartlandflags.com. Breaking down the Big Ten from the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. After 10 days, we are back with our latest Legends and Listeners live on this Thursday from the Channel Seed Studios on the Iowa Everywhere Network. I am Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, joined by the Athletics' Scott Dochterman. Scott, I happen to be looking back at our very first episode today, and you'll see why in a second, at our venture together. It was in the days after Cade McNamara suffered a quad injury during the Kids' Day at Kinnick Scrimmage. So that's when Legends and Listeners started. And now, that was episode 1. Here we are at episode 38 as we approach basically one academic year in the books. And we are still talking about the precarious situation of Iowa's quarterback room and McNamara's health. So, as most of you know, 2 quarterbacks are currently on the roster after the exits of Deacon Hill and Tommy Pacholski, on top of Spencer Petras, on top of Joe Labus, before them Alex Padilla and Carson May. So, Scott, it's Cade, Marco, James Rezar in June, and
question mark and last name. I should say first name question, last name Mark. That's kind of where we're going. But I do think there will be a quarterback. It's just a matter of who and when. And in your piece today in the Des Moines Register, talking to Brad Heinrichs, it seemed Brad was he seemed very confident that Iowa would get another quarterback. I think that's probably the case. But the question is who? And I did a lot of portal digging for the Athletic on my piece today on Big Ten, the 10 big topics, and looked through it every day, multiple times a day in the portal. And the ones that I expected to be there weren't there. So I'm really fascinated to see which direction they go.
Well, and yeah, I think that's exactly where we should start this conversation, because that is where the biggest panic is. Now, thank you for pointing out the Brad story. I've got your 10 things on my list too today to discuss. But one of the things that Brad has said, the Swarm has said, and which was reflective of the coaching staff, is they don't want to bring anyone in just to be a body. They want to bring someone in that they think can play at Iowa. That said, you do need more than 3 quarterbacks. You have to run a scout team. You have to account for like one injury at least. Mm-hmm. So you have to have somebody, right? But you also don't want to you just kind of, I don't know, I want to say got rid of some of the guys that weren't going to play, but you got rid of some of the guys that weren't going to play, Deacon Hill and Tommy Pacholski. So, do you settle for, I don't know, somebody that's like a backup somewhere that's never played? I don't know. I thought there would be more quarterbacks in there. I think they did too, right? So it's not a great list to pick from. So do they actually, I don't know. I'm interested to see where they settle and what they can get.
Well, it's going to be, there's a couple of different directions here that they can go. And, for one is, are they going to settle for a right-hander and ignore all left-handers? Because that's been the case for when Brian Ferentz was there. They chose not to recruit left-handed quarterbacks. and that could be a real issue. I think second of all, as you said, is it somebody who's a backup? If they're a backup, they better be a backup at a major college who has seen good reps against good defenses, even in practice, so they can come in. Because the issue with Cade McNamara, as you brought up in the intro, he may be healthy by June, but he hasn't been healthy really for a long time. And will he be able to last the entire season? Which is kind of a curse for Iowa, because for so long, until Spencer Petras got hurt, you had in this like 10-year period of nothing but health, from Ricky Stanzi's injury through Spencer Petras's injury in 2009 to 2021. There was only one missed start by a quarterback over that realm. Now you've got a quarterback who has been injured a lot, and the attrition at that position has been horrific in recent years, and that's because the recruiting has been horrific. And the development has been horrific. And I think the one player that you look at the most that we're going to eye is Joey Labus, because what if he had a really good spring game, Chad? What if he has a really good season? That's on you, all Iowa, for that. So, but that said, new quarterback whisperer. Now time go get your guy. And in my opinion, Chad, and this is just more for practice purposes, go get a walk-on quarterback. Just somebody who can hand the ball off, if nothing else.
Well, I wonder if, who knows, maybe that's going to be their solution. Get a walk-on quarterback, and then James Rezar is your number 3. I don't know. That's not a great solution, but I just don't see much out there. Brendan Sullivan's about the only one out there that I would be happy with, I think.
Really?
I don't know.
I like Sam Heward. He's left-handed, though. He was at Washington. He was a 5-star. He went to Cal Poly, had a nice year.
I wondered why you brought up the left-handed thing. So go ahead.
Yeah. He's, Damon Heward's son. It's Damon or Brock's son, and then the other one's his uncle. So he's got a pedigree. He was a 5-star, went to Washington, started one game, did not go well, played really poorly in that against an Apple Cup. So it was a big game. Ended up transferring to Cal Poly, had a nice run there, and then now has hit the portal again. He's I want to say a sophomore. I think he would be a really good fit if they're okay with left-handers. I'm sure Tim Lester would not have a problem with that, but you never know, because you got to rearrange the way you run the football with left-handers in a lot of cases, and organize bootlegs and stuff like that. He would be one that I would be there. Brandon Sullivan, of course, would be another, but in order to get a quarterback like that, you're going to have to thread the needle to say, not only you're going to come here to compete, he's number 1, but if you are the best guy, you're going to play. That's how I feel anyway. That Cade is basically the incumbent. He wins the job. He's the guy. But if you beat him out, you'll play. Can Iowa make that case? Can Iowa make that argument? Can Iowa persuade a quarterback that you could be number 2 here with an opportunity to be number 1, and next year you'd go in as the guy? I don't know. It's a tough position to be in.
So Marco Lainez is an interesting factor here, because no matter who they bring in at this point, because it's not going to be Devin Brown from Ohio State. No. It's not going to be somebody at that level probably. So whoever they bring in probably is competing for number 2 at best, right? Like, don't you think? Like,
if you're Sam, Heward,
Sullivan, I think would be a 2.
Yeah, for sure. Sullivan and Sam Heward, to me, if they come in, you're number 2 with the opportunity to be number 1. Okay. It depends on what happens in camp. And I would make sure that Cade is aware of that. I would make sure they're aware of that. That Cade's number 1. But kind of almost like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields in Chicago. Russell Wilson's number 1, but I'm kind of looking at it like Justin Fields is going to beat him.
Pittsburgh, yeah, right.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. Did I say Chicago?
You said Chicago, but
gosh darn it.
Understood.
Yeah. Anyway,
you were just on the Bears podcast.
No, I was on Hogan Jones, but that. But anyway, that's how I would explain it. Would they be willing to accept that? There aren't very many Power 5 jobs open other than Northwestern right now. Right. Gavin Wimsatt just left Rutgers. He's a running quarterback. He's Marco. Let's just say that,
right.
at this point. So I think that those two, I'd have to really do some investigating on the FCS quarterbacks to see what they would fit. But I bring this point up, and this is part of the problem that we've seen over the years, Chad, is they're willing to go everywhere for quarterback, and they've largely failed for a long time now. But yet you had somebody in your own backyard a couple years ago, from Solon, and Miller. Yeah, Kevin Miller's kid, Cam Miller. He goes up to North Dakota State, and he's been great there. You had somebody in your own backyard, you ignored them, and then you end up going, and how good would Iowa have been with Cam Miller at quarterback last year? Now, does it mean they beat Michigan, Penn State? Probably not. But does it mean that they beat Minnesota? Yeah. Does it mean that they compete against Tennessee? Probably. Because I think Tennessee, that 35-0 game was because the offense couldn't get their uniforms on right. And so that to me is identifying quarterbacks. The more we look at this, Chad, I mean, other than scorched earth and wide receivers, identifying quarterbacks has been the worst thing that Iowa's done in recruiting for almost a decade. And that's an indictment on the offensive coordinator, frankly. Not the current one, but former one.
Well, and I think Lester, needs to be able to get his own guys. So, is one we know that he offered Sullivan when he was at Western Michigan. I don't know what his connections are to Heward, but I mean, I can't imagine that he's going to be hung up on a left-handed thing. I mean, and you even think about it. Let's say he's the starter in 2025.
Yeah.
Jennings Dunker's probably your right tackle next year, and he might as well be a left tackle by that point. So just keep him at right, So it's not really that bad of a situation in that sense, but I don't know. We'll see. They certainly need somebody. I do think Linez, though, is kind of a winner here because he's going to get opportunities now because they're not bringing in like we said, like a Devin Brown, for example. Not that they were ever close to that, but that's just an example that's been thrown out there. A guy that competed for the Ohio State job, didn't get it. All of a sudden now he's like, whoa, okay. But now I think Marco at least has a shot to develop. But I mean, it sounded like he had a good spring. I mean, let's not forget he's a true freshman still until May 10th when finals are over.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We are automatically look at him ahead a year, but then in the school sense of things, he's finishing up his second semester on campus. So it's easy to look at him and wonder what, I think people are probably hesitant with that because he couldn't get past Deacon Hill for the first team reps this spring. Well, I do think that there was a rational reason for that. And it was give him double the reps with the second and thirds where he's more comfortable, and then make sure Deacon Hill runs all the trains on time against, one of the best defenses in the country, and make sure that the rest of the players around him improve. So I get that part of it. I think you're being obtuse if you think that there's some sort of he couldn't be number one, but I do want to see some growth there. And can he be number two? And can he replace Cade McNamara if he's hurt, or even in a late game situation where you've got the results already been decided? That's what you hope for, but can he be a legitimate number two, or do you need to bring in a legitimate number two? That's to me what the big question is now. I don't think he's ready for that. I'm not saying that he can't be in another year, but I think right now he's probably not ready for that unless you have just specific Marco plays.
Yeah, I think it would be a dangerous plan of attack, especially when you got everything else kind of in place for this season. So that's why everyone is very, very interested in this whole backup quarterback thing. Thanks to Heartland Flags and Gifts, our primary sponsor on our Legends and Listenerhood. Heartland Flag and Gifts has you covered nearly every sport, every team, and every flag. Visit our friends online at heartlandflags.com or get your hands on some stuff in store at 3719 Southwest 9th Street in Des Moines. It stopped raining, so now you can go. You can go safely. Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I don't know. So let's talk a little bit, unless you want to got anything more on quarterbacks, about guys who didn't transfer. I felt like I was a little surprised that no running backs left. That was the first eye opener for me. And I always got a little scholarship dance to do, but I feel like they come out of this pretty strong at running back.
Oh, I think they're great at running back. I mean, I don't want to go any further because I've seen that fall apart before in the past. But I mean, when you're having TJ Washington take reps at wide receiver, and then you really go 4 deep. I mean, with LaShawn Williams is your power guy. You have Caleb Johnson, to me, who I still think has the most upside out of all of them. I think he's an NFL caliber guy if he can really just take that next step as a runner, and that's up to the line too. I was kind of surprised Jazz Patterson stuck, honestly. He's from Florida and it was running with the twos, and maybe that was just a specific day plan and not a camp plan. And then Kamari Moulton, looked like he was bigger, and he really shows some wiggle, and he shows some quickness. And so I think they've got some really good guys at that position. And finally, if they ever had to get in a spot where, devastation happens, I kind of like Max White, and then you look at Brevin Dahl from your hometown there, or where you live now.
Very high on Brevin. He just won the 100 and 200 at conference last night, and they won Drake relays.
Exactly, the Drake relays. The record-setting Drake relays.
I know
for ADM.
He's fast, man. I'm telling you.
To me, I'm like kick returner. Put him on kick return. But you have that. I think they're really set there. So I guess I am surprised that somebody didn't say, I don't know if I'm going to get, even if I play, it's not going to be the level that I want to play. But it's a good problem to have if you're Iowa's offense going, maybe we should just run some wishbone or something.
Well, the lack of running back attrition as we stay in the offensive side of the ball here, Scott, to me cements the notion that Terrell Washington Jr. will probably stay at receiver at this point now, right? I mean, because that's where you have a need. And Raylan Sharp, we saw yesterday, commits to Fresno State. That was a target, had an Iowa offer at receiver, a highly accomplished FCS guy at Missouri State. He goes to Fresno State. So it's still hard to attract wide receivers to Iowa City, Scott, and they probably still need one. There are a lot of options there in the portal at receiver, at least at this point. What do you see at the receiver out there in the portal right now?
I haven't looked close enough. I mean, there are all kinds of names, and there are all kinds of names from different places that either A, had some good statistics, or B, they're at really high level Power 5 guys like a Caleb Brown who didn't get much of an opportunity. But that's what's more difficult than even in assessing quarterback, Chad, is would they fit at Iowa? Would they be interested in Iowa? Would it work at Iowa? And that I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of the belief if you could get somebody that's probably in that G5 FCS level to kind of come in and compete, that's probably a better option today. They were gifted Charlie Jones 5 years ago when he was at Buffalo, and he was a pretty good player there. And then he transferred, and he didn't get to play his first year. That's just crazy when you think about it, even though coming in as a walk-on. But if you could get somebody like that, that's kind of overlooked, that could come in and, hey, you're going to get every opportunity here, take that step up, that sort of thing. I think that would be the right path to go. I don't think they're going to go out and pull up a starter. It's not realistic because Iowa has to prove something in the passing game. And at quarterback right now, your number one is been out with an ACL. And who's your number two? Well, he was 2 of 7 in a bowl game. So I think right now you've got a lot of proving to do before you can get an accomplished wide receiver to come in here.
Yeah. I wonder if they could get this Keon Gray's guy from Ohio State who just entered the portal, classmate of Caleb Brown's. That might be your one in. Hey, I was buddies with Caleb Brown and the scout team, and hey, there's opportunity here. But I see he's visiting. He's from Arizona. He's visiting Arizona State. Probably a better chance he ends up there. I have no idea, if that's even a possibility. But at least there's a connection there. That's the other type that maybe, hey, it kind of worked with Caleb Brown so far. What if we grab another, top 100 recruit in the class of 2022? That'd be pretty good. He also played against Iowa, by the way, in that 54-10 route. So, as did Caleb Brown. But and it looks like they might be poking around a D tackle, Scott. I don't know, at least a little bit. feel like we talked about that last week. I feel like that's the one area on defense where I'm a little nervous about depth.
Yeah, you're right. And Iowa would always make it work. But I think if you're somebody who, if they can get, you've got kind of two areas you can go. One is go older, somebody who's looking to really make a mark. They may not start, but they'll get starters reps. Or you could go somebody younger, talented, steps in, but then that probably shoves out some of the guys you've already recruited. I don't know. If I'm a D tackle, I take a different view than I do if I'm a wide receiver, which is if I can go in, if I've had some good minutes, and even though your snaps will be, if you play well, your snaps at D tackle will be comparable to the starters. And so it does work. And then you could put yourself in a position. And if you got an extra year on top of that, then you can become a starter, but I would say I would put that position clearly third on the list of needs in this offseason. But if Iowa can get a quarterback, a receiver, and a rotational tackle on defense, then I think all things sold, that they're in decent shape.
Well, all this portal talk does kind of merge with what we talked about at the beginning a little bit with my conversation with Brad Heinrichs of the Swarm Collective. There are some challenges right now for fundraising, and he was pretty clear about that. One of the quotes he said was, Ohio State's quarterbacks make more than our entire roster. Now, it could be, you never know what's true from what he's hearing, et cetera. But it is pretty amazing that Iowa's been able to retain the roster that it has. And I feel like it's after this football season, I feel like, I don't know, you're going to lose so many guys, and I don't know. It just doesn't feel like Iowa football, this has to be the year, I guess is what I'm saying, like for maybe a little while. Maybe I'm wrong, but you got all this defense back. You've got a very experienced offensive line. Most of it will be gone next year. You got Luke Lachey. Cade McNamara, for his injury is very proven, and he could be a pretty good quarterback. They're going to have a lot to replace after this year. And then you just wonder how if Iowa can't keep up in the NIL fundraising game, how that might affect things down the road. I don't know. It's just, if you want to read the story, it's hawkcentral.com. We also have a podcast. You can listen to that. I don't know. Your thoughts on any of that stuff?
NIL is fascinating for a million reasons, and we're working on a bunch of stuff at The Athletic that will shine some light and what some of the heads of collectives have said and what their rationale is. And I would say that one thing I've noticed, and this is not exclusive to Iowa, but it includes Iowa, is that there is a lot of paranoia and there's a lot of embellishment. And everybody's worried about what everybody else has, and then somebody will say something, and then it immediately becomes fact, and it becomes hard to remove that. Among those things are Ohio State does not have as much money as Ohio State Ryan Day says they have. And their people have been like, no, we don't have $13 million to spend on people. But it gets out there, and then everybody's worried about it. And then truthfully, but what Brad speaks is the truth. And that is that Iowa does need to have more people involved than just 400 or whatever it is, season ticket holders in the football program. You need to have this kind of enlisted, the God's Hawkeye army, to be out there for the Swarm. But it's also the flip side. When fans get continuously hounded to support the team, then there can be resentment too, which is, I'm already giving to the iClub. I'm already paying season tickets. I'm already buying sweatshirts and Happy Like Hannah t-shirts and and going to these other games and these other events. And man, this is a lot to ask. And then I see what happened with Caden Proctor, and then immediately it's like, hey, that wasn't part of the Swarm money, but it's all connected. And then that's why people are getting kind of burned out on this. And that's why the higher levels, the conversations about the House case getting solved and settled, and then bringing a lot of this in-house as far as paying players. All this needs to happen pronto because, as you said, this fall, this winter, it's going to be a new game in Iowa. And, Brad and Bruce Rastetter loaded up last year and paid a lot into the Swarm. They're not going to be able to do that every year. Fans are going to have to contribute too, but at least until the system allows the schools to contribute. And that's where the frustration lies. Hey, you're getting a lot of money from new Big Ten contract, and you're bringing in all these schools.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so one of Brad's ideas, we didn't talk about it on our show, but this is one of his ideas is he would like, I don't know if it's an option or like a mandate or whatever, like that $100 of all the seat licenses for whatever donation for the seats, NFL, it's called seat license, whatever they're called at Iowa. Like I know, like around where my parents sit, I think it's like $600 per seat is the donation, and it goes up as you get closer to midfield or wherever. It can be in the thousands, but like let's say it's $600 per seat for wherever you sit at your games. Hawkeye fan listening to this, if you could check a box that says I want 100 of that to go to the Swarm, I think most people probably would check that box.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of then all of a sudden that's his idea, I think. Because if you could get 40,000 season ticket holders to pay $100 a year, that's already in the seat donations or whatever, or on top of maybe that's too much to ask. That's $4 million. So that would solve a lot of things in terms of paying players in football and women's basketball, which people care about right now quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And men's basketball, which I think that's where the avalanche could happen sooner, just because that's not where fundraising is going too well. And so, if Owen Freeman has a strong sophomore year and gets $1 million offer or whatever, I'm embellishing probably too here, Scott, but let's say, basketball.
You're not.
Okay.
So Tony Perkins, yes. Owen Freeman, if he's first team all Big Ten, which I would expect that next year.
Yeah.
Then 750,000 on up is probably fair game.
Yeah. And we know, Fran even said they can't afford that. So, so that's what I'm saying. I think basketball, you could see this really start to happen soon with a place like Iowa. Like you said, if this doesn't get under control. So it's all interesting stuff, but I give Brad a ton of credit because he's trying every avenue. He's turning over every rock. He's not getting paid $1 for this. In fact, he's paying out of his own pocket to make good on certain contracts that he's committed to, that his name is on, because, he doesn't want to, not follow through on the contract like we've seen with other collectives around the country. So I know that was a long rambling answer, but I guess what do you think of that idea or that concept, I guess, of, I know Beth Getz doesn't want that money to come out of her university athletics coffers, I'm sure. But at the same time, as I pointed out in my column, like if football doesn't win, that's the quickest way for an AD to get fired too. So it's a delicate balance in terms of how your relationship goes. And we know her predecessor did not necessarily embrace all that.
I look at it in a couple of different ways. And there needs to be some sort of commonality discussion between Iowa and Brad and the collective to figure out what are the rules and what's allowed, because sometimes it's a grayer area. You can be a little more aggressive in private business than you can be, it's just to make things click, because sometimes there is still that iron fence between paying players and not, and that could be construed as donating to pay players, and get turned in for that type of thing. But there does need to be opportunities to promote the Swarm more than just an occasional commercial at a game, like, hey, join the Swarm, or a tweet or something like that. There needs to be more engagement that way from Iowa athletics. And I talked to Beth in Cleveland, and I did a 2-part conversation with her, and we talked about NIL and the Swarm, and she's stockpiling money because she thinks that paying players is coming. When I asked her about fans having that decision of, Do I support the I Club or do I support the Swarm? Do I give X amount to the athletic department or do I give X amount to the Swarm? It's kind of we're all Iowa. It's all one thing, one entity. It's just a matter of to which direction it goes. And I think that's kind of the question that she has to face. I think she's more willing to accept it than Gary was. Gary, of course, was not willing to accept any of that. And I think in this case she is, but how? And I also think that the coaches have not stepped up in this. And the coaches need to be more forceful and not necessarily. And Kirk probably has been most forceful of the main coaches, but that is not just, hey, we need money, pay us so we can get players, but it's let's invent ways to engage fans, because what am I going to get if I give you $100,000, $500,000, $10,000? What am I going to get out of this? Just the joy of watching one more victory? Give me something. So maybe that's men's basketball deciding, you know what, we don't have the PTL anymore, and we don't have shirts and skins anymore, and we don't have Midnight Madness anymore. But maybe we'll go up to Cedar Rapids in June and go to a gym and have a scrimmage and have a kind of a celebration of Iowa men's basketball. Have some of our players there to do meet and greets. We're going to have prizes at the door and make it all the money go to the Swarm. Maybe make it a $10 entry fee or something like that. You can meet all the players, you can watch them scrimmage against each other, and then have a rally, have a pep rally. Maybe do 5 of those in June. Maybe do a couple in July around the state, in Iowa City. Get fans engaged. I mean, fans need to be engaged. You can't just say, here's the sign, game today. And then, oh, by the way, if you don't pay our players, we're going to suck. I mean, it's just, you got to do more than that. And so I think that's what some of these coaches have to do to be involved, because, if I'm like, I don't know, they like the coach and the team's okay, but I'm not kind of apathetic. They're not going to give. You want to be a cheerful giver, as the good book says.
You brought it back to the Bible, Scott. Way to go. That's pretty impressive when we're talking about NIL collectives. I bet some SEC teams could borrow from you there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Be a cheerful giver.
Yeah.
Like the good book says. Oh, man, you made me laugh. Anything more on this topic? I mean, I kind of want folks to listen to the podcast, the full podcast, or read the story or whatever too, because I feel like I'm leaving stuff out. But
sure.
I don't know. Like it's complicated, and I think the perfect world is like the university. I don't know how, if they can figure it out with Title IX and everything else, but universities, use their TV money to pay the players, okay, and then outside of that, that's where you get the car dealership stuff, the big ticket guys, the Caitlin Clarks, the whoever, the Owen Freemans, the Cade McNamara's, that's where it feels like it would be more the intent, where it's not just, I mean, Brad has a full-time job, everyone. Like, he doesn't get any money for this. Like, and that's the guy. Like, it's amazing that he is has done so well, honestly. Like so I marvel at what he's done with, I don't want to say so little, but in a way, he's taken on a lot. So
there's been a lot of pressure put on him, no question. And I think that's where Iowa has to help him out. And Iowa never did for the first year and a half, 2 years of this, up until Beth took over, that it was more of a, we don't have to deal with them, and it was and it didn't need to be this confrontational type of situation. They needed to work together. I mean, because this is the system that we have in place. And, there's a couple of different avenues that I think schools eventually need to go. And I think it makes it easy, because Title IX is not easy. It's a federal mandate in a federal law, and you get sued very quickly, as we've seen in Iowa for doing stupid things. But one is media rights. 2 is ticket sales. I mean, if you pay if you're sure that all players have the opportunity to have an education, and then the payments come from something like media rights, like a percentage, like 25% of media rights, 25% of ticket sales, then it does become, if you're football, men's basketball, even and women's basketball, hey, sorry, this is capitalism here. They make the money. Now, but then also have a pool, and this is, general funds that, okay, this is like the swarm money right now, that you go and do good works and good deeds and you get paid X amount of things, and then have that for everybody else. And okay, so it'll cost you, $5 to get into a field hockey game. And at the end of the year, there's $50,000. I don't know. I'm just ballparking, money from that, or baseball or whatever. And then that goes to those players. I think that's something you can do, but it all has to be solved, because right now, if you do that, you won't play a postseason game for a long time.
Right. I was listening to a national podcast this morning on my run, and they were talking about, this will lead, like this NCAA settlement. That's all related. You guys can read about that. It will have an impact on paying players eventually, and from universities. And so we're going to see sports cutting for sure. And one thing that they brought up is maybe some schools won't cut sports, but maybe they'll make them non-scholarship sports, where kind of like Division III almost is now. That could be a possibility. I could see, anyway, I'm going down some wormholes here.
That's where you run into Title IX, because you have to provide equal opportunity, for the scholarship part of it. And
right.
And so you're talking about, maybe men's sports would go down the club sport realm. Maybe
that's what
baseball,
I meant. Or to even out the scholarships. Yeah.
Right. Because women's won't, if you're going to cut, we saw it that they got hammered when they cut 3 men's sports and 1 women's sport. Not only they have to reinstate the women's sport, but they had to add a second women's sport as part of the settlement. So, Beth understands that better than Gary ever did. So I'll leave it at her hands. She understands it more than I do too.
Sorry, I'm just reading a text there. You ended quicker than I thought.
Sorry.
I know you got some vacation coming up, Scott. So I hope you are packing with yourself a bottle of Steeple Ridge bourbon. Steeple Ridge delivers a high-quality, delicious drinking, award-winning craft bourbon. If you don't find Steeple Ridge at your favorite retailer, ask for it by name. You too, Scott. Steeple Ridge is distilled, aged, and bottled in Erling, Iowa by Lonely Oak Distillery. We thank them for their support of Legends and Listeners and Iowa Everywhere. Do you want to talk about your 10 topics piece, Scott, or should we do NFL draft? I've been excited for both. So
let's do the NFL draft, Chad, and then wrap up with the 10 topics. But
go ahead. You lead.
It was a good weekend, I thought, for Iowa. I know people were disappointed, and immediately there was the knee-jerk reactions when Cooper DeJean went into the second round. But there was a couple things that people need to remember before they say that, oh, he should have came back. See, he's all that. No, it is that there was a record 23 offensive players went in the first round out of 32 picks, which meant 9 were reserved for defense. The first 14 picks were offensive. 6 quarterbacks went in the first 12 picks. That's never happened before. So when you see great defensive players getting pushed down, everybody gets pushed down. And Quinyon Mitchell was a guy that, ran a 4.33 40 at the combine, and he's at 22 overall. And Teron Arnold, which everybody expected to be in 10, 12 area, he's 24. That's going to push Cooper down. That said, Cooper DeJean ended up in a fantastic location for him and what he can do. Philadelphia loves him. He went there. It was his last visit pre-draft. He fits there perfectly with what they want. That defense, that secondary was trash at the end of the year. It was garbage. That was part of the reason why that they went from being the Super Bowl favorite to barely making the playoffs. And he's going to fit in with Quinyon Mitchell and revamp that secondary. And knowing the way he plays, as how hard he plays, and as exciting as he is, he's going to be beloved in Philadelphia, which is pretty hard to do. So I love that opportunity for him. I think he's going to be great there. And I look forward to seeing him return his first punt for a touchdown sometime in the first 2 months of the season.
Yeah, it worked out so, unfortunate for Cooper because he had been mocked to Philadelphia at 22, and then lo and behold, they end up taking the first cornerback off the board. So we thought at least 2 cornerbacks would be off the board by then. And then, of course, Detroit, another location we thought might be good for Cooper. They trade up and get Terrion Arnold because he was also kind of the number 1 cornerback up there. And then the other team that could have taken him was Baltimore, but they've already got Kyle Hamilton. Yeah. So they take the Clemson corner, who's more of a true corner. Yeah. And so it just kind of worked out, unfortunately, for Cooper in this particular draft. When you think about only 9 defensive players go in the first round, that's crazy. Yeah. And next year's draft is going to be super heavy on defense. So there's no guarantee there's no guarantees he would have been any better next year, I guess. Maybe. He would have been. Yeah. He probably would have been, but still, I know next year's supposed to be a heavy defensive draft. So a good fit for Cooper. I feel bad that Phil Parker didn't get that first rounder, though. I thought that would happen.
Yeah, I did too. And that's what we kind of wanted, not for just Phil, but just for Cooper. The stature of being a first round pick, it matters in the big picture. And, Iowa's had 19 defensive backs selected under Kirk Ferentz, and none of them have been in the first round. Not Cooper DeJean, not Bob Sanders, not any of them. And, even though some have played like first rounders. So that's unfortunate. But and as disappointing as it is, it's also, hey, you get to free agency faster now. There's not that 5th-year option. They don't have it in the second round. So he's got a chance to go ahead and be that guy. And now Philadelphia moves into a tie for second place for the most drafted Hawkeyes in Iowa history of 17. So,
oh, wow. Good stat.
Yeah. Yeah. So just tied with Detroit and behind the Packers, who didn't take a punter, but the Bears did. So the Bears finally enter the fold for the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Yeah. That was very exciting for both of us because, and it was funny to see, and I listened to your show, your Hogan Johns appearance, which was really good because they had questions about, most people don't know much about Tory Taylor. They just see punter and, roll their eyes. And I know some people really kind of trash the pick. I think even Bears fans are wondering, what are we doing drafting a punter when we need an edge or a 3 technique? But I thought you did a great job explaining it. And I think Ryan Poles saw what we saw over 4 years, Scott, is that Tory Taylor is a difference maker. He does flip the field. He does win you games, which you astutely pointed out. He probably won Iowa 4 games in the last 2 years, with no offense. And I thought the Iowa State game in 2021, I guess it's 2021, so 3 years ago, that was to me like he flipped the field that day, and basically turned. It was because of him that they got that fumble 6 from Jack Campbell. So and that so you could went to the Penn State game that year too.
Yeah. And, the Penn State game. What is it? The 1, the 2 twice, 3, the 8, and the 12. I think it was against Penn State. They win by 3 points in a 4 versus 3 matchup. Iowa State, the most important top 10 matchup. Averaged 51 yards a punt. He had parked 5 inside the 20. And then you look at the South Dakota State game, where they get 2 safeties because he parked. He had 10 punts, 7 inside the 20. And then 6 of them were down inside the 12 that day. And 2 of them ended up turning into safeties. So that was, and they win 7-3, by the way. It's a laughable score. And then I thought last year against Wisconsin was really impactful. And he had a great game against Tennessee. It doesn't matter, but he did. It's just when you look at the numbers and remember, it's not that he was punting in the sunshine and rainbows.
Exactly.
He was at Minnesota was horrifically cold, and he's holding for extra points, and he never really had a problem for that either. But like last year, he had 32 punts inside the 20, and 23 of them were inside the 13-yard line. In 21 and 22, his numbers were 77 out of 162 were inside the 20. It's just remarkable numbers. And then you spill it over to the Bears. What can he do for the Bears? Well, he alleviates the pressure on both offense and defense. Now that they have a quarterback who's already the best they've ever had, with three good, well, since Sid Luckman, but hey, we're not talking World War II. But then with three receivers that are really good, that they can attack on third down, because then they feel like, you know what, we got a punter who can bail us out if we need to. Likewise, if you're playing Ferentz ball and you're up 3 at Lambeau Field and you're at the green, it's 4th and 2 at the 40, and there's 2 minutes to go, then you know that he's not selfish to say, I'm going to just punt it, hard and far. I'm going to go ahead and angle it. Mm-hmm. And then he gets it out to the 5-yard line. And then it's like, hey, punting is winning. So he can bail out both sides with the way he punts. Now, I hope he can do that. And we haven't just talked him up so much, but as we know, the Bears were 31st in net punting last year, and they cut Trent Gill yesterday. So,
did
this
they?
is Tory's gig.
Yeah.
This is Tory's gig. I think he's going to be really good at it.
Yeah, and we'll get to see him for a long time, presumably. I mean, he's punters last a long time in the NFL if they're good. So, Eric All, how about that? Goes earlier than Tory. He goes early 4th round to the Bengals. Logan Lee early 6th to the Steelers. So it feels like Eric All with it kind of shows you what Iowa missed out on last year, even without Luke Lachey.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought his best couple of games were in early October. I thought he was really looking the part. I could tell early on that whether it was just recovering from his back end surgery or apprehension with the Iowa system, that he wasn't as great of a blocker as he was but then halfway in. And he really gave a good description about how the blocking differences between what he was doing at Michigan, what he's asked to do at Iowa, and how that really impacted him. And he looked so much better. And I thought, man, if him and Lachey could have been there together, that could have been, a really good combination. I'm not saying they would have looked good overall as an offense, but I think it would have been much better. He's running now. He's running sprints, I saw at Iowa. And, he's going to his home area, which is really nice for him. I think, now that they do have Mike Gesicki and they drafted a 6th-round tight end. So I don't think there's going to be an intense pressure to play right away. But, playing with Joey Burrow, I think he'll be in good shape there. So long term, he's the type of guy that maybe don't draft him in fantasy football this year, but draft him in the future in 2025 and stockpile him or something.
Yeah, Joe Evans goes to the Ravens, a great franchise. He'll get, I'm sure he's getting, he'll get every look possible. Noah Shannon to the Raiders, Steve Stilianos to the Titans, undrafted free agents. Did I miss anybody?
Rusty, Feth got a tryout opportunity with the Bengals as well. I mean, so those are, a lot of times they'll bring in 20, 25 guys and have 2 or 3 spots and, so he gets that chance. But out of the undrafted free agents, Chad, I mean, Joe, I think has a chance because Joe's different. He's built different and, he's got a freakish jump. I mean, 41 inches. That's incredible.
I mean, he's like, he gets classified as a walk-on converted quarterback, but like that guy, he's a good athlete.
Yeah.
He's a good player. He's a good player.
I could make the case that he would have been much better in, say, Wisconsin's defense than Iowa's because, he was forced to go up against do a heavy 5, go up head on against a tackle who outweighed him by 80, 90 pounds and had 6 inches on him. And yet he was very competitive at that. Whereas if he would have been a stand-up guy off the ball, like the Ravens play with their outside linebackers, I think he'll have a shot. And plus, John Harbaugh always keeps a free agent or 2 for special teams, and he'll excel in that position. And I could not be personally more happy for anybody than I am for Noah Shannon to go to the Raiders. The Raiders, I talked to his agent yesterday, were very much in contact with him for a long time, really liked him. There was one scout in particular they raved about and said, this guy really got it and pushed for Noah. And looking at their depth chart, they've got 2 starters clearly, but they're a 4-3 team. That's perfect for Noah. And I think he's got a chance. First of all, he's got a chance, and that's really important. Second of all, a legit shot. I mean, like, he'll have a chance to make that team.
Wow, that's great to hear. That's all. Yeah, we're all rooting for Noah Shannon. No question about that. All right, Scott, up at the Athletic, you got your 10 things post spring. What do you want to highlight? Floor is yours. There's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, there's a lot. I packed in a lot there. I probably could have split them all off into individual stories.
I know. It was a lot.
First of all, coaches. There are 6 new head coaches in the Big Ten. Head coaches, and then 9 new OCs, 9 new DCs. So I tried to kind of highlight where they are, where they came from. There's 3 from the NFL. There's 2 that moved internally, which was a couple that moved internally. You had Tom Allen, who got fired at Indiana. Now he's at Penn State. Joe Rossi went from Minnesota to Michigan State. I thought that was kind of interesting. And Chip Kelly probably moving to Ohio State was probably the signature move, from somebody going from being a head coach to being an OC. I went through the portal a million times and found how many each team had. And, they're at like 412 right now, 414 actually now, players that have entered the portal from Big Ten schools, and keeping track of that is like herding cats out in a barnyard, so it's really difficult. But, I guess I got a lot of different stuff. I picked some of the best games of the year that I thought. And of course, somebody was like, oh, it's certainly a choice to have Iowa and Ohio State over Michigan and Michigan State. And I'm like, Iowa and Ohio State both won double-digit games last year. Michigan State won how many? 4? Have a new coach. You have almost 50 players in the portal. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a close game. It wasn't last year either. So anyway, so I dug into 10 different topics and really went through them.
Yeah, it was eye-opening. Like you said, 48, I think it was 48 Michigan State guys in the portal over the last year. Only 15 for Iowa, kind of hovering in that low end.
Yeah.
Similar in the range of like Rutgers, Penn State, Nebraska, Northwestern.
Yeah.
And
a lot of those
attrition.
A lot of those guys are either walk-ons, and that
right.
They count. You have, Spencer Petras, you have AJ Lawson, you have guys that have, weren't there last year that, hey, they got an extra year, so let's make it count. So, so the numbers are relative. They look big cumulative, but when half to third to a half of them aren't even scholarship players, it's not anything to get like, oh, I can't believe this, that type of thing.
All right. So I don't know when we're going to do our show next week. Do we know? What's your schedule? I'm not back. I'm out of town too. So I'll be back Wednesday.
Well, we will chat and let everybody know.
All right. So I thought maybe you could break some news and tell us when you're around, but we'll figure it out, everyone. Yeah. We'll let you know. Usually we try to go Thursdays unless circumstances warrant. So maybe we'll see you next Thursday. For Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow. Thank you for joining us on Legends and Listeners from the Channel C Studios. We'll talk to you next week here on the Iowa Everywhere Network.